for that, lad.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Lifted between them, and now they're really rolling. And I can tell you, that there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
Hello everyone, you're very welcome to the Irish Examiner Gaelic Football Show. My name is Paul Rouse and I'm joined by the former Armagh footballer Oisín McConville, by the former Galway footballer and its current coach, John Divilly, and by Tony Leen, the sports editor of the Irish Examiner. This week, Ireland's senior county football teams officially returned to the training field in preparation for the 2022 season. Pre-season competitions begin in 3 weeks. The National Football League begins in just over 6 weeks. And the championship is a mere 4 months away. We are here to discuss all of that, including the managerial changes of the last few months. But we are going to begin with club football, and we're going to go around the provinces. Tony, we're going to go to Munster first. The semi-finals, the weekend after next, St. Finbarrs against Aero Guinness and Austin Stacks against Newcastle West. Can you see surprises in either of those games, or will Finbarrs and Austin Stacks most likely proceed to a final?
Not really, Paul. No, I got to be honest, but I would say that with a health warning that, and I'd be interested in what you're bringing in terms of from the other provinces. If I was a betting man right now, I would say that the All-Ireland Club champions in January won't be from Munster. I saw both the Cork and the Kerry County finals, and the Bars beat Clonakilty and Cork. Austin Stacks beat Cairns O'Rahilly's. Good winners, but they're both, Paul, missing an X factor. I know look, Donaghy obviously is, still so much revolves around Kieran Donaghy for Stacks, but he's nearly 39 years of age at the same time. And the Bars, so much revolves around two players, Ian Maguire and Stephen Sherlock inside in the corner. So in terms of what both will bring to the table, they're both very structurally good. They make good decisions. They play a lot of what I would call mistake-free football. But I'm not certain either of them. I think they'll meet in a Munster final. And I don't know actually what way the draw, I have to admit, I don't know what way the draw actually works after that. But I would be surprised
if Leinster v Connacht and Munster v Ulster. Okay,
well, Oisín will fill me in on Ulster. But if the Bars and Stacks were to play in a Munster club final, I couldn't call it. But either way, it would be a struggle for me to see either of them go all the way. That, and sometimes you've seen teams come out of Kerry particularly, and you're saying to yourselves, they've got their eyes on the All-Ireland. I got the impression from both the Bars and Stacks that they were really, really delighted to win their county finals. And you'd never say about a Kerry team that anything else is a bonus, but I would definitely say that the priority for both was winning the county and not the All-Ireland.
So you saw a lot of club football in both Kerry and Cork this year. What did you think of the standard?
I think the standard in Kerry is a level or two above Cork. And I say that obviously as someone who was involved in a Cork senior club. Very interesting, actually. I was actually talking about this to Kevin O'Donovan, actually. It was the Cork CEO a couple of months ago. The night before, I had wandered over to Nemo Rangers. It's only a half a mile away from me. And because I heard they were playing a challenge game against Kenmare. And I wanted to go over and I wanted to have a look at Sean O'Shea more than anything, really. And both sides were at pretty full strength. And at that stage, Paul, Nemo would, if they weren't the number one side in Cork, they're still the standard in Cork. And I would say Kenmare realistically would be about maybe the 6th or 7th best team in Kerry. And I know you can't read too much. It was a Wednesday night. It was a challenge game, but they were both strong. Sean O'Shea was playing, Stephen O'Brien was playing, Nemo had most of their players. And I'm not joking you, if Kenmare had taken their goal chances, they could have run up a big score. And I do think that there is that gap at the moment. No, are Stacks the best team in Kerry? They probably are at the moment because Crokes have dropped a bit. And I do think that the Bars are the best team in Cork. But I just don't think this, particularly in Cork, I don't think the standard is what you would call razor sharp.
the gap between club players and county players in terms of conditioning and skill level across Kerry and Cork, has it closed? Is it widening? How would you describe it?
I think it's always going to stay wide. I mean, going back to that challenge game now that I went to Sean O'Shea. No, I know Sean O'Shea is an exception because he's an exceptional footballer. But he was just, at a level of fitness and conditioning and pace and movement. He basically was doing as he wanted on the night. And that's a fair statement to make, because, Nemo, I got to remember, Nemo had won the 2020 county championship in Cork only in this autumn, so it wasn't like that it was a mile since they'd won that thing. So they were still at a level. John and Oisín will know this better than me, irrespective of how good a level of conditioning and sharpness you get to as a club, given the advances in sports science and given, the likes of the best practitioners in that area are operating at intercounty level. I don't know what you think, lads. I still think you're talking 15-20% behind an intercounty level of fitness and prep.
Oisín?
Well, funny, I was at 2 games last week, and I was glad I got to that Leinster Championship game with Port Arlington and St. Lomans. But the first game I was at was Kilcoo and Ramor United, and I thought Ramor were well off it. As far as Kilcoo go, I think 99% of the players that's on the Kilcoo team could probably play for Down. But when Tony's talking about that level, it's a different level. Look, those Kerry boys who are trying to bridge the gap from club to county, that's a big void to fill. I don't think it's as big when it comes to the likes of Down. I think Kilcoo are. When I looked at Kilcoo the other night, I would say Kilcoo are well back on where they were 3 years ago. Well back. But still, they are one of the standard bearers in Ulster. And I suppose of all the teams that we've seen coming through, yes, Derry Gonley have been there 5 of the last 6 years. But of all the teams that we've seen coming through, it doesn't say much, to be honest, about the standard in Ulster. I think the standard in Ulster is back a little bit as well. But I think there's an exception to that rule, and I think Glen are the exception to that rule. I think they're way ahead of everything that I have seen so far this year. I think they're all Ireland champions and waiting. When I went and watched Port Arlington and St. Lomans, it was played at a completely different pace. It was very, very, very open. I was very impressed with Port Arlington. They went 1-6 to a point up, and then they just fell in a hole somewhere. And then, they were able to just about get enough to get back into the game. Kilcoo, I'll tell you what, one thing about Kilcoo is that they are, they're so well coached, so well trained. Everybody knows what they're about. They can sit off you, they can press you, they can play it whatever way you want to. But I still think they're a few shy of where Glen are at this moment in time. I think they have also the benefit of the fact that they are fresh into this competition. They have had huge success, obviously at underage within Ulster. I think there's a lot of the players that are instantly recognisable. Derry are on the rise, and I think this Glen team, there's just something a little bit different about them. And I have been involved in seeing a lot of club football in the last 20 years, and they just there's just a vibe off them that everything is right and everything is going in the direction it needs to go in. I think physically they would probably overpower the likes of Kilcoo. And the other side, Clonairon obviously are fresh into it as well. Haven't beat us in the county final, which is still hurting. But
that was a shock, Oisín. What happened that day?
It was a shock because I'll tell you why it was a shock. If you had seen Cross in the first round of the county championship, you would have said there's no way this team's going to win a county title. And then, to be honest, they improved. Every single game they improved. They missed a huge amount of chances early on that game against Clonaireland. We're still 6 up going into the last quarter of the game. I managed to somehow lose the game. So as much as it was a shock, Clonaireland would have no fear of playing against Cross. In fact, they'd have no fear against playing against any of these teams in Ulster, because at underage, they've beaten all of these teams before at different levels, 14s, 16s, 18s. So there's a bit of pedigree there. There definitely is, but I still think of all the teams I've seen, Ulster, Leinster, I'd have to say Connacht and Munster, I think Glen are a nice little bit ahead of everybody else right now.
Do you agree with that, John? Anything out of Connacht to stop Glen?
It's hard to know. I mean, the big game this weekend was finally taking place between Montpellier and Pearses. And Montpellier were full value for their victory in Galway this year. It's only their 5th title ever, their first one since '87. So it's great for Galway football that there's new champions, and it gives hope to every other club that a team like Corofin, who have been undoubtedly one of the best ever up there with the Crosses and the Nemos and all these great teams before. It just gives all these clubs and all these players something to really play for now, that the championship can be won again. Will Montpellier, Pearses or Knockmore challenge the Leinster champions? I don't see why not. Just going on the Knockmore, like Knockmore are in the final now. They're just sitting back until I think it's the 9th of January when the Connacht final is on. So Pearses have had such a long gap here. I mean, Montpellier have played 2 games since Pearses have won their Roscommon final. There was COVID in both camps, Montpellier and Pearses, so it's which team has recovered sufficiently. But it's the makings of a really, really good game. There's 6 or 7 guys from Montpellier with county experience. The same in Pearses. The Dailies are synonymous with Roscommon football, and they will do everything they can to get over the line. They have a really good manager in Pat Flanagan. Montpellier have a really good manager in Val Daly. So it makes for an interesting game, and a lot of these club games have gone to extra time over the last few weeks, and it wouldn't surprise me if this one did too. And whoever wins the Connacht, can they beat the Leinster champions? They can, because Leinster is wide open. I do like the look of Portarlington as well. I've been following them for the last few months and talking to a couple of Laois guys who are in the know. They would have said that this is their year to win the Leinster title, never mind the Laois title, and this is 3 months ago. So they're going as underdogs against Crokes. Crokes are not going that well. The talk locally in Dublin would be Crokes players know Croke Park very well, and they've great experience. Your Paul Mangans, your Rory O'Carroll.
Yeah, the fact the two Leinster semi-finals between Portarlington and Crokes on the one hand, and then Shelmaliers against Naas on the other. They're both in Croke Park, which is a novel thing.
It's brilliant. It's fantastic for four teams, 4 sets of supporters, and the talk around is that Crokes' experience of senior players in Crokes' experience of playing in Croke Park will help them. But I mean, there's 7 or 8 Portarlington lads that have played in Croke Park with Laois. Colin Murphy, Robbie Piggott, Patrick O'Sullivan. There's Osborne. There's Adam Ryan. A lot of them have played in Laois minor under 20 tight or under 20 competitions. So I don't think Portarlington will be overawed. I think there was COVID down there as well, Oisín, and that's why maybe they got sluggish after the 20-25 minutes, and they obviously regained their composure and saw the game out. And the other side then is Naas, who have come from nowhere really, I suppose, haven't won a title since 1990, I think, have a chance to get into their first ever Leinster club final against Shelmaliers. Again, no Wexford team, I think, has ever made the Leinster club final. So there's so much going on in this year's club championship, which is fantastic for everyone. It is really hard to call a winner for the outset. And I know Watty Glen are really setting the light on fire. But Kilcoo will be very hard to beat, and you know, it wouldn't shock me if Kilcoo actually overturned them.
It would definitely shock me. But the one thing, John, you're saying about Port Arlington, they actually lost their keeper about 5 minutes into the second half the last year, and they were very reluctant to change their keeper. Very reluctant. He couldn't kick the ball out with his right foot from about the 15th minute of the game, maybe the 20th minute of the game. And they persevered with him until his last kick out was a toe poke with his left foot. And I think that was enough for everybody. And it looked, the lad that come on looked very, very young. He actually did okay, I thought, when he came on, but the other keeper looked very, very assured and very good, even with his kickouts and his restarts. I think when he went off the boil a little bit, and as I say, they were very reluctant to replace him. So I think that might be the one issue that they aren't able to rectify ahead of playing Kilmacud, which is obviously a big task.
Tell me, Oisín, is it just a simultaneous group have come together with Watty Graham's? Because funny enough, I remember it's gas like that. You know, we should be talking about them. I was involved with Douglas when Fela was in Cork under 14. So I'm kind of guessing it's probably about 9 or 10 years ago. Those lads be about 23 or 4 now. And I remember it was down in St. Michael's, down in Mahon. And we actually played Watty Graham's, and there was a small woolly-headed full forward who, unfortunately, it'd be great if I could remember his name now, but he was class. Watty Graham, I remember thinking to myself, I'd never heard of Watty Graham's up to that weekend. And I always remember it kind of stuck in my head afterwards. And it's only lately that I've been kind of monitoring them again. So is it just the fact that you've got an exceptional group has come through?
Yeah, I think that all that group that won under 16, minor, under 20 county and Ulster titles, I think they have more or less stuck together. And then you bring Glass back into the mix, and that brings that unit back together. I think the guy you were talking about could be Danny Talon. I think he might have had a head on him like that when he was a bit younger. Not like you three. He had plenty of hair. But the thing about Watty Graham's is that it's amazing to actually keep the nucleus of that together. So 8, maybe even 9 players to keep all those guys together. And as I say, probably the missing piece is Glass. He definitely has obviously made a huge impact since he's come back. He just seems to have seamlessly gone back into it, and he's got a real drive. Like if you hear him speaking, the first thing he'll speak about is not Derry. The first thing he'll speak about is his club and how he want to be successful with his club. And I think, as I say, there's just that feeling about them. Do you know what I mean?
Do they have, like, and I have a reason for asking this question, do they have that kind of strut about them? In other words, if they were to come out of Ulster, and let's just say Stacks were to come out of Munster, would they be overawed in any way by playing Austin Stacks?
Well, I'll give you an example just. I'll go to Glass again. And Glass won a Hogan Cup when he was 14.
Wow.
Playing with Mahara. So these boys won't do overawed. I mean, they're used to success. Success is what they're all about. Even to having not won a county title in 60 years, whatever it was, and to get their heads down straight away and come through that St. Union's game, which, to be honest, was the big game for them, I thought. To come through that game, sticky conditions, and they just about were lucky enough. I mean, St. Union's missed a penalty in that game as well and could have tucked them out, but they looked like a completely different animal at the weekend. And having been managing in Monaghan for a couple of years, I know what Scottstown possessed and how good they were, and they nullified all of the big threats, and they have a serious ability to do that. And obviously they're well coached and well managed.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this straight away. So the Munster final, the Ulster final, Connacht final, all the provincial finals are on after Christmas, which is which creates another issue within all of this. But it means that the All Ireland final isn't until the start of February. But let's call this now. Who's going to win the Munster Championship? Oisín.
Stacks.
Tony.
Honestly, it actually depends on how much Kieran Donaghy is able to give, because do you see he has the
It's not
basketball.
a sentence, Tony. It's an answer.
Tony,
Yeah,
don't think Tony got the memo.
Yeah, I think Stacks barely.
John?
I'll go for the underdog, the Cork boys.
Going for Finbars. I'm not quite sure that a Cork person has ever seen themselves as an underdog, but we'll move on. The Ulster Club Championship. John.
I'll stick my neck out with Kilcoo.
Okay, Tony.
Well, the way Oisín is after talking up these boys from Derry, we daren't. I'd actually just keep talking them up, given who they're playing in the semi-final.
Oisín, you're going for Glen anyway.
I'll go for Glen, Paul.
Yeah. Connacht. John, you may as well start with Connacht again. Give us a steer.
I'll go for Pádraig Pearses.
Tony.
I must admit, I thought you'd say not more there, John. You worried me. No, I'd still probably. I know what you're saying about Pearce. There's a lot of good players, but I'd edge towards not more. I'd give not more a rattle.
And Tony, you may as well start with Leinster. Port Arlington, Croke, Shelmaliers or Naas.
Yeah. I'd go Kilmacud.
John.
I'll go with Naas.
Oisín.
You didn't give me a chance in the Connacht one either, but anyhow,
You don't know anything about Connacht football.
you're not the first person to say that to me.
You're the two of them together, so I apologise, Oisín. No,
I'll go with Pearses and I'll go with Kilmacud.
Okay, and in one word, All Ireland champions, Oisín.
Glen.
Tony.
Yeah, Glen.
John.
You can't say Glen, John, because you went for Kilcoo, remember?
Yeah, I remember, Oisín. So I'll go with the underdogs again. Cork. The Finbars.
Go with Bars.
I'll throw it
Okay.
out.
So before we move on, the split season comes in next year, and the next time any of these clubs or any club team in Ireland plays in the 2022 championship will not take place in any county almost certainly until August, and in quite a number of counties I suspect it will be September before they play club championship. What would you do for a club in that time, Oisín?
I think there's an opportunity there for club players to take some time out and come back, reinvigorated, rejuvenated. I think a lot of county leagues will start probably in April without county players. I know the system that they run in Monaghan is that without county players, it's 2 points for the winners, and with county players, it's 5 points. So I think, it's the other way around. Sorry, no.
So you get more points.
2 points without county players and 5.
Yeah, 2 points, 5 points with county players.
So you get more points. So you get more points with your county players.
Yeah.
That should be the other way around, surely, shouldn't it?
No, it's to make sure the teams aren't penalised if they're when they field without their county players.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah, of course. Sorry about that.
So I think if that starts in April, there's an opportunity now for players to get a proper break and probably come back February time and start training towards August then with hopefully a proper league in between. I think I've heard some murmurings in my own county that they're going to run some sort of winter league, which is just going to annoy people as much as it's going to offer people football, because it's meaningless really. And I think if you properly structure it that you start in April, I think most club players will be happy enough with that, to be honest.
What about you, John? What do you think? What do you think should happen in Galway for clubs?
I think more or less what Oisín has said will happen throughout the country, in that from maybe Paddy's Day onwards, you will start to see some cup competitions springing up and then you'll get into club leagues around May, June, July, and getting ready for championships in August and September. I do think a lot of guys will go travelling. Club players, they'll now have the opportunity to go travelling in June and July and still come back for club championships, which gives the plus for both player and club, that guys can go away and they can still come back for the meaningful competitions. And I just think it's great that this has finally happened. I know there'll be tweaks and there'll be a few little issues here and there, but you know, finally the club player has a defined season. Will counties get it right? No, they won't, and they won't probably take advice from Connacht Councils or Croke Park on it. They'll do their own thing, but they'll figure it out as they go along. And I think players are now starting to have a voice in clubs, and they will tell their clubs, we want January and February off, or you know, we will do weights or whatever we need to do. You know, give us a break here, and we'll come back and we'll give the club championship a real go when it really matters. But you know, that'd be my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm the same as that. Well, I mean, I'm a complete and utter fan of split season. I think it compartmentalizes things. It gives certainty. I mean, we're all involved with clubs, and you know, I could very easily now set out a season. I know that down this part of the world, whether it's the Keller Shield in Cork or the county leagues in Kerry, they'll start in March. They'll play away. The club championship will be in the late spring in Kerry. Everything will be parked for the inter-county, and then they'll ramp it up for the county championships in the autumn. Everybody and every player, whether that be a coach, whether it be a manager, whether it can be a player, can actually periodise their season now. There's a degree of certainty. They know that their club football, the ordinary club football, is going to have action from March through to June, July, maybe even if they're playing without county players. And then there's going to be the huge block of inter-county where everything grinds to a halt, and then it's full system go then come September for the county championship. Is it the ideal, perfect scenario? I don't know, but it works for me, that's for sure.
I think a bigger problem for me, Paul, is January now, because like with taking back in pre-season competitions for inter-county, Seagerson Cup and college fixtures, the latter end of the club championship just seems very, very packed and stacked again. And like, obviously, if the weather conditions don't play a ball, I mean, how much of a setback or a mess is that going to be, you know? But I just think for January seems like a lot of stuff going on, and for the very talented 19, 20-year-old, it's very unforgiving at a time of year when you should be getting yourself ready and prepared for a long season ahead. So I know you guys maybe in UCD don't have the same issues that the rest of the colleges have, because there's a lot more pulling power. But I do think that it is, as I say, a little bit of a thankless task.
I lost you there, Oisín, a few minutes ago.
Yeah, there was a bit of a break on the line there, Oisín. I don't really know what happened.
Someone playing a poor mouth.
But can we talk for a second, actually, in terms of structures for the inter-county season? We're not going to this podcast is kind of set to explode if the word structures is used ordinarily, but I think it does matter that pre-season competitions have been brought back in and that they start again on the 5th of January. And this week, on the Wednesday, the 8th of December, inter-county teams are allowed back into the field for training sessions. Now, you want to be spectacularly naive to imagine that there hasn't been de facto training underway in counties in various parts of Ireland, albeit might be nicely disguised.
Awfully.
Awfully have not been training, I can confirm. It makes absolute sense that counties are now back training for 2021 when you consider that the O'Byrne Cup, the McGrath Cup, the McGennon Cup and the FBD League start on the 5th of January. The National League begins on the 29th of January. The Provincial Championships on Easter weekend, the 16th and 17th of April, and the All-Ireland football final is fixed for Sunday, the 24th of July. All matches, providing Congress agree in February, all matches will finish on the day, with the exception of the All-Ireland final, meaning extra time and then penalties. But this idea of bringing back the pre-season competitions and basically playing them off in a week the group stages of them, 3 matches in 8 days, more or less. It really does put a press on a fast start, John.
It does, but again, I think you will see various counties putting their under-20 squads out. You'll see some counties using it as trial games, and they'll still have other challenge games lined up along the side in order to get ready for the league at the end of January. So they will be used as trial games, friendly games, call it what you want. But if teams win their first 2 or 3 group games, then they'll put a strong team out in the semi-final and try and win a final, because it'll give good momentum going into the national leagues. That'll be my personal opinion on it. And you know, speaking about the structures, like the under-20 is also starting earlier this year. I think it's starting in March. So that's going to put, again, you know, organizational logistics issues for them guys that are caught between Sigerson under-20 and the really good guys on inter-county squads. But it's just how you use these competitions, Paul. That'd be my view on it. I just think teams will have the National League only in mind here, and they will use these pre-season competitions like glorified challenge games.
7 league games in 9 weeks, Oisín. How would you set about preparing for that? How do you train for that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a big bank of training already been done as far as, you know, S&C. I think that's all.
Have Armagh got much done?
No, nothing. But I think whenever you, I think whenever you're going into a block of games like that, I think the work has to be done. I think you have to manage players from one game to the next. But I think the time where, you know, we patched up a player and got him through to the next game, I think those days, especially from a league point of view, I think those games are sort of done, and those days are sort of done and dusted. I think, you know, you have to have a fully fit squad. If you haven't, you have to have a big enough squad to have a player that comes in and okay, in some cases there's no replacing certain individuals, but I think you need to, you know, to manage those players as best you can. As I say, I already said, it's pretty unforgiving, those 7 games in 9 weeks, but there's nothing you can do about it. Players want to play games. I mean, the training will probably be late in between, so you know, anybody who has a good bit of work, and unless, you know, they get some injury which is not like a muscle or something like that, the amount of muscle tears that inter-county players, well-developed inter-county players get nowadays are few and far between. But even if you look at the Premier League in the last couple of weeks, in particular at the weekend, I mean, they had to go deep into their squads. They're professionals, so it is a big ask. And I suppose John's on about, you know, those pre-season competitions that, you know, I'd say that most management teams will probably pick one game and go hard at it and have that as their preparation for the league. But to think that they will go hard at it for 3 games is it's nigh on impossible when you consider what's ahead of them then over the next 3 months.
Do you think the inter-county managers put much? Do they put much store on the Sigerson Cup, on watching Sigerson Cup matches, Oisín, in terms of how they organise panels and letting players go, or do they want control? Do they want control of their players?
If the Sigerson Cup was to be put to one side in the morning, I think I can't think of any inter-county manager who wouldn't be happy enough with that. I mean, I've heard inter-county managers saying that Sigerson is a competition now that should be played without players on inter-county panels. So imagine what sort of squads you would have then. So I think for most inter-county managers, it's a nightmare.
If we look at the first round of National League fixtures in Division 1, Armagh against Dublin, it looks like the calendar is to be properly released next week, but it looks like it's Armagh, Dublin, Tyrone, Kildare, Donegal, Kerry, Mayo, Monaghan. You start that league with a loss, and it's already, you're under pressure here. And if you're in Division 2 and you start that league with a loss in your first game in Division 2, not alone are you under pressure to not get promoted, but you're under pressure, fearing relegation, and then ending up in the Tailteann Cup, which makes its unveiling this year. This first round, Tony, how do you get yourself right for this first round?
You see, it depends, Paul. It depends who the manager is, and it depends who the county is. And it, you know, if it's a manager who's been at the helm for a considerable period of time, and this goes back to your previous point about the pre-season competitions, then they can actually be a godsend, because you're only tweaking. You know, you're putting out, as the lad said, maybe a second team or an under 20 team, and you're only looking for 1 or 2, 3 small gains out of those. So, like, you know, like, look at Jack O'Connor, for instance. He's coming back. I saw him now. He was sitting down in front of me at the county final last Sunday. He's in the market for a goalkeeper. He's in the market for a full-back. You know, he might have actually had both on the Stacks team actually last weekend, as it transpired. Shane Murphy, I'm led to believe, from Crokes, has been drafted back into the squad. So he's already, irrespective of what Kerry, for instance, do in the McGrath Cup, he's already looking at that trip to Donegal right now. He's knowing to a large degree, and obviously I'm allowing for injuries and things like the Sigerson Cup intervening in the meantime, because there's a heap of the Kerry lads who will be playing Sigerson Cup this year because of the general age profile. But in terms of that first weekend of the league, it's not like that suddenly he's going to wake up 10 days beforehand and he's going to be saying, okay, what have I got? What have I, have I this, have I that, have the other? I think realistically, the prep, as you rightly said, is Wednesday, the 8th of December. I didn't know it was actually as soon as that actually starts for intercounty prep. If you're a new manager coming in, this is the time. It's from December the 8th until January the 10th, and bringing those first those pre-season competitions into play. That's where the bulk of your work is going to be done. By the time you get to the first round of the county league, you should be pretty much set fair. I don't think Armagh v Dublin, I don't think Kerry above and Donegal will go into that game and start blaming the fact that we haven't had sufficient preparation.
What's the view in Kerry? What's the view in Kerry in the talk around the club championship about Jack O'Connor's appointment?
You mean in terms of what, good or bad?
Yeah, what's the feeling?
Well, there's an interesting sequel to it last night, in that the outgoing vice chairman of the county board, a man called Eamon Whelan, who would have been a former selector with Jack back in the day at under 20 level, and would have been part of the committee that appointed Jack. He was defeated in the vote for the county chairmanship by Patrick O'Sullivan, who had been there previous to the outgoing chairman. So he's coming back in as chairman. Now, you can look at that two ways. Pat the Bag, as he's known, is a very charismatic individual, would have a lot of support around the county, would be well known, and would be well got, in fairness. Is it a vote that people said, yeah, we loved him as chairman? Or is it a vote that says Eamon Whelan is very much tied, whether he likes to admit it or not, to Jack O'Connor, and we're not 100% happy that Jack O'Connor was the choice? And was this a vote, was this almost a referendum on Jack O'Connor's, Kerry managership? I was talking to a few people. I was down in Tralee before the county final, and there was some people saying, I'd love to have seen the new crew given a go. Stephen Stack's team that involved Donny Buckley and all these lads given a go. I genuinely think that the jury in Kerry, Paul, as you probably know, is probably the most fickle jury in the land. And if Kerry are winning the All-Ireland next July, bringing Jack O'Connor back was a masterstroke. And sure, wasn't it the obvious thing to do anyway? Sure, he's a proven winner. But if Kerry don't win the All-Ireland, it's going to be seen as, what did we go back to Jack O'Connor for a third time for? Sure, there was a brilliant part, So it's very easy, I'm afraid, to say, what's the view on Jack O'Connor? I genuinely come back to me in July and I'll actually tell you the view on Jack O'Connor.
This pressure on inter-county managers, though, it comes right from the beginning. And Jack O'Connor goes up there, he plays his league games, and I think it would be really, really harsh on him if there were to be a vote on another man to be appointed chairman, and that's a referendum on Jack O'Connor's appointment. And I suppose the real point about Jack O'Connor's position would be revealed in the series of results that come down. But ultimately, it's very hard to see Kerry not being Munster champions, and then it starts. it starts for Kerry, and then Jack O'Connor will largely be measured by what happens from the end of June and through July.
I was surprised. I have to admit, I was absolutely surprised by Kerry's stance on the change in football proposals. I thought absolutely that they would go for Plan B. They're talking now. What we really wanted was Plan B plus, but they had a scenario where they had 7 league games, which is exactly what Kerry needs. And for me, it represented a fear and an anxiety of, oh Jesus, hold on, what happens if we're not in the top 4? Which surprised me, I have to say. I'd say that in the first instance. But you've got to appreciate, lads.
For Plan B not to get through was an absolute failure of GAA politics. It's an absolute failure of leadership at the top of the GAA to deliver a majority for a workable proposal for a refined championship. They have a couple of months to sort it out.
Yeah. And by the way, in fairness, honourable exclusion to Kevin O'Donovan in that respect. He was the guy who was actually driving it. And if some of the people above him maybe had been as good. Anyway, we said this is a structure-free zone. Going back to what you were saying, like, Jack, it doesn't matter whether it's Jack or Santa Claus. In a scenario, every defeat in Kerry is a crisis. Whether it's a league, I know what you're saying about the likelihood of them winning a Munster Championship and that they will again be in at the business end of the championship. But it's 7 years now since Kerry won an All-Ireland. And you got to remember, they hadn't won before that since 2009. So do your sums on that, and you're talking about a dozen years. Now, when Kerry went from 96 from 86 to 97, that's 11 years. That's been described as the greatest famine in Kerry football history. So irrespective of whether Kerry are playing Donegal, Armagh, Dublin, whatever, there's massive scrutiny, lads. There's massive scrutiny on Jack O'Connor. And it isn't because it's Jack O'Connor, although the fact that he's been there twice obviously ramps it up a small level or two, I would say.
John, where I would probably depart from Tony a little bit is the notion of Kerry exceptionalism, because I think that there is unbelievable pressure all over the country in various counties, and I think Galway is one of those places where there is a public interest in the senior football county team who are expected to perennially challenge for inter-county honours, first of all for Connacht Championship and ultimately for the All-Ireland, no matter how realistic or unrealistic that is. Do you see that pressure? And do you experience it?
Well, it's expectation, but I mean, we as Galway players and former players and supporters, and now I'm part of Pádraig's backroom team, I mean, we want to be successful. That's why we go out and train, 2 or 3 times a week to achieve this. Is it unrealistic expectations on ourselves? No. I mean, that's what we want. We want to be up there with we want to be consistent like Mayo. Mayo have been consistent the last number of years. And there's a reason for that. We haven't got that level of consistency yet, and it's our job to get the players, I suppose, to train accordingly and perform accordingly. So there's pressure, Paul, but there's pressure in every county.
Why will next year be different for Galway? Why will Galway be different next year? Or what will happen that will make Galway more competitive next year, or into an All-Ireland quarter-final, semi-final, and so on?
I suppose hopefully we'll have an uninterrupted run with this, that COVID, while it's still here, will allow us to train properly as a group every week and maybe make these connections that we've lost out, certainly in our squad. So I just think that if we get a run at this again, we have enough talented and committed players to challenge for a Division 2 title and promotion, which is it's all about promotion. And then it's Mayo in the first round of the Connacht Championship, and that's what every Galway player dreams of, is playing Mayo in the championship. And ultimately, we know if we're right, we can beat Mayo on any given day. We haven't done it the last 2 years, but we've been in a position to do it, but we haven't executed it. So that's a problem that we need to overcome this year.
I wouldn't, sorry, Paul, I wouldn't put John on the spot by asking him. So, Oisín, what do you think of Cian O'Neill going to Galway and being involved with the Galway setup? next year? Do you think it's a bonus? Do you think it will enhance them?
I think he obviously has garnered a lot of experience, and I think that experience, whether it be good or bad, through the Cork setup, will definitely help. I think he may find going into the Galway setup, I think he will find a serious ramp up from what he's been used to. Structures seem decent in Galway. I just think players need to now buy into what's being offered, and like if you consider the performances before the league was cut short, and the performances not this year but last year, afterwards, I mean, they seem so poles apart. That's the stuff that I'm sure is driving the management batty, but also driving them on as well, because they realise that there is something of substance there. Anybody who's seen them in the first half of the Connacht final last year, you know, they looked as if they were well structured. They looked as if they were well fit to handle Mayo, and then just collapsed in the second half. So I think there were a few problem positions. I think goalkeeper's still an issue for them. I think they probably need a little bit more energy around the middle of the field, but I do think that Cian O'Neill going up there will just bring that extra. And I'll tell you what I like about it. Somebody who has looked in from afar. Does that make sense? That hasn't been part of that setup and is going in with fresh notions. So I'm sure the first thing that Pádraig and John, the boys, will be doing is, you know, what's your perception of what we're doing? What's your perception of us? What's the perception out there of playing against Galway? And I think once he brings that to the table, and then, as I say, what he's learned along the way. I mean, he's been an inter-county manager before. He has a huge amount of experience, so he'll be bringing all that. But I do think that there's problem areas for Galway, and I think they're the first things that need to be addressed. But if you look at them, you know, as I say before, the break and after the break from that league, not last year, the year before, there was a huge difference in the way they played, the way they looked, and they've had a few chasing and experiences since then. So you know, it's a tricky one, but I think, you know, Galway are moving in the right direction. And I think, you know, first things first is, you know, they need a very good league behind them. And Paul's already said about all teams hitting the ground running. I think Galway is one of them teams that's particularly pertinent to.
Oisín, can I ask you, you've managed club teams successfully, you've managed third level team less successfully. Would you like to be an inter-county manager?
I don't really know, Paul, at this stage, to be honest. I think it depends what way the new structure works. I think the one thing that was holding me back from taking a job was just the sheer velocity of work, and the fact that, you know, there didn't seem to be any downtime, there didn't seem to be any off season, and I'll just be interested to see how the split season works, and then look at it from that point of view. But certainly the way inter-county has been over the last 10 years, my life, work, family, it wouldn't be conducive to me being an inter-county manager and giving it absolutely everything. So if there's a bit more structure about it, then definitely yes.
If you were a manager and if you were to take it, who would you bring with you? Who would you want to coach with you? Is there an outstanding coach out there that you've looked at over the last number of years and thought, oh, I'd like to have that person coach my team?
I don't know if you're angling for a job, but you're at about. I was saying, if I was making up a list,
girls under 16 team may not get me the nod here, I don't think.
There's a couple of guys who I've been very impressed with. Kevin Madden is one who sort of goes under the radar, and I know Mickey Hart had him in his last year. He's one of the guys. But to be honest, there's a few guys who have worked with at club level who will be right up there. But he's the one that sort of springs to mind as far as modern day coaches is concerned.
Okay, if we look then at one other aspect that's new in the coming years, the Tailteann Cup. And John, I want to just put you into a scenario here, which I know you won't want to go there, but I want you to consider it. Galway have a difficult league and end up not making the Connacht final and getting relegated from Division 2 into Division 3. You're trying to prepare a team for the Tailteann Cup, which is where you would go if you lost a championship match. You would play against the other teams for Division 3 and 4 who are knocked out of the championship, as well as New York, who would qualify or come in at the quarterfinal stage. How would you go about motivating a team for that competition? Would you have any interest in it, is my question, I suppose, really?
Well, any interest in playing in the Tailteann Cup?
Yeah.
Well, if you found yourself there, you have to play. I mean, if you sign up to play football with your county, or you're involved in a county, if you find yourself relegated into another competition, you have to honour that competition and you have to respect all the other teams in that competition. So, yes, you'd have to prepare for it. It mightn't be what it's not what you set out for, but I mean, it's like going into a club relegation battle. You're senior and you're in a relegation. If you lose, you go into intermediate and so on and so on. So you just prepare. I mean, you just have to dig in, Paul, and that's where the character of the team obviously will ultimately come out. You may look at it as, okay, there's a reason why we're in this competition. Is it that our players aren't good enough? Do we need to start bringing in younger and younger players to blood them to get back up to the top table again? So I suppose it just depends on, you'd have to review why you got there in the first place and then look at it as an opportunity or a springboard to get back up fighting with the top teams again. That's the way I'd look at it if I was with Galway. If I was with another team that was in a Division or 3 or 4 situation, again, you look at the players you have at your disposal, you look at their ambition, are they good enough to play in the Sam Maguire Cup? And if they are, then you start the building process to get them up by winning a Tailteann and playing in a Division 2 league and so on and so on. That's the only way you can look at it, you know. You can't look at it any other way. I think it'd be very disrespectful, and I would hope that if it did happen to Galway or whoever it does happen to, that you would honour the competition and have the respect that the other 15 or 16 teams are in the competition.
Oisín, how would you embrace that competition?
I think it'd be very, very difficult. I think it just depends on where you're coming from. I think, realistically, those teams in Division 4, any manager you talk to, they're all talking about the league and how important the league is because they want to claim the league because, that's the basis of the quality of football they're going to play in the following year. So that's the start of it. But I think if you're one of those, if you see yourself, even though you mightn't have won an All-Ireland in 20 years, like let's say the likes of Armagh still see themselves as one of the big teams. The likes of Derry and Galway and Kildare and teams like that, they all see themselves as big teams. They want to be, playing in the Tailteann Cup. So I think it's very, very difficult sell if you end up there from Division 2. I think even whatever two teams end up getting relegated this year, it's a difficult sell. But I do think for the other teams that it should be seen as an opportunity. And I think, to be honest, most of them are, because, as I say, once the league was over in previous years, it was like, that's our season over. And I remember talking to a lot of the managers through COVID, did different things with them at different stages as far as interviewing them and stuff. And they all sort of had the one message, was that, it was a reduced league. They had 4 games. And they were the most important 4 games of their season. Realistically, were they going to advance in a knockout competition, provincial level or All Ireland level? No. So they see the league as a stepping stone, and I think the Tailteann Cup is realistically an opportunity for them to garner some silverware and improve confidence, get a bit of buzz going about the county again. So I think it can be used in that way. But I think for a team, like some of the teams that I mentioned there, it's a very, very difficult thing to go into a change room and sell it. very, very difficult.
What about you, Tony? Have you heard soundings on it?
I think I'm picking up Oisín's point there. I think really it would be player driven. The attitude would, as you said, you can sell something like that to a group of players if you're from a Galway or a Kildare or one of those teams that we say are just bubbling under the big 4 or 5. And at that stage, then I think that's a player group thing, Paul. I think that's a player group who decide at that point, okay, let's actually get the most out of this. You can't be relegated from the Tailteann Cup, so we can do what we want with it. Obviously, it's going to be an opportunity for experimentation, but it's realistically something, as Oisín said there, you're looking for momentum. If you're in the Tailteann Cup at the end of 2022, you're really looking to see how you can actually use it as springboard for 2023. That's what I would think at that stage. There's no point in trying to sell it as something that it isn't. I would still, again, not going back, Paul, to the politics of the situation, but I would still love to see a scenario down the track where it is properly marketed and that somebody actually gets a hold of it and does it as some kind of, like, I always look back at the All-Star weekend in the NBA in America, like, and how that's just such a weekend of everybody there. And if you can actually roll a Tailteann Cup into an All-Ireland final weekend and actually bring the razzmatazz to it, and that's something that's going to be done, hopefully, or it's certainly going to be attempted, and you can obviously add sweeteners onto it, then you are obviously providing a little more luster to the event down the track. But certainly in the short term, I mean, I looked at John Divilly's face when you actually asked him that question, and I think if there was a bubble coming out of the top of his head, it was kind of, are you taking the piss, Paul?
Well, John knows me too well to know that there would never be an opportunity if that happened. For those of you who are listening to this in podcast, John has just put on a Galway hat, we'll think about it that way. In terms of the marketing, actually, what is interesting is that the semi-finals of the Tailteann Cup are on they have a standalone weekend at the end of June, and the final is being played as the curtain raiser to the first All Ireland senior football final on Saturday, July the 9th. Now that is all semi-final ahead of us. July the 9th, yeah, before as a curtain raiser to that semi-final, All Ireland semi-final. So this is our last Examiner football show of 2021. I'd like to say thank you to Larry Ryan for running this podcast during the year, to Jack Neville, to Raf Rocca, to Tony Leen, to everybody at Examiner Sport for making it happen. A huge thanks to Oisín, and especially today to John and to Tony for joining us. Happy Christmas to everybody, and we'll be back soon.
A grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lad. There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Lifted between them, and now they're really rolling. And I